Tonight, a frantic search for survivors. A deadly earthquake rocks Japan hours into the new year. Homes destroyed, enormous infernos, and massive waves.
It's just a violent shaking. Violent shaking.
Thousands urged to flee over fears of a tsunami. New year, new tax measures.
Tax increases slow down the economy.
Reaching deeper into Canadian pockets. Plus, savoring hockey history and a long-awaited league debut.
PWHL Toronto! It's here, and it's something to celebrate.
It's just so cool to see people like me playing.
Boasting the best players in the women's game, inspiring the next generation.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Heather Butts.
Good evening. Japan is on edge after a powerful earthquake rocked the country, triggering fears of a tsunami along the coast. The magnitude 7.6 earthquake destroyed homes and businesses. At least 8 people are dead. Tens of thousands are without power. CTV's Kevin Gallagher on how people are coping in a country with a long history of devastating quakes.
Terrifying tremors rippled along Japan's west coast, triggering the country's highest tsunami warning and an evacuation order. Officials fear 3-meter waves could still threaten shorelines and are urging people not to return to their homes yet.
Pretty massive, if you ask me. So the whole room was shaking, the TV was shaking.
Just after 4 in the afternoon local time, a massive earthquake hit Japan's Noto Peninsula.
Dozens of quakes have been recorded. The largest hit 7.6 on Japan's seismic scale, disrupting train service and causing panic for these shoppers. Japan's chief cabinet secretary, Yoshimasa Hayashi, says the military and emergency crews are responding. We are receiving reports of people trapped inside collapsed buildings, he says. Even with Japan's strict building codes, some structures could not withstand the force.
There's a possibility that radioactive materials may be released into the air.
The country is no stranger to the consequences of dangerous natural disasters. Nearly 13 years ago, a tsunami triggered a meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The government says no nuclear facilities have been affected, even as they warn citizens to prepare for aftershocks.
This area has been an area of swarm activity, swarms of small earthquakes. So I would be concerned about it having significant aftershocks over the coming months or even another year.
In a statement, Global Affairs Canada extended sympathies to those affected by the earthquake in Japan, but have no reports of Canadians injured or missing. Tsunami warnings were also issued for North Korea and Russia. Heather?
Thanks, Kevin. Russia launched a record 90 drones in an attack on Ukraine early in the new year. A 15-year-old boy was killed and others wounded in the southern city of Odessa. Meanwhile, Russian officials say 4 people were killed by Ukrainian shelling in the Russian-controlled city of Donetsk. The attacks follow a series of heavy aerial bombardments that began Friday. The Israeli military is pulling thousands of troops out of the Gaza Strip, a move that could clear the way for a new long-term phase of fighting. Today, Israeli airstrikes continued in southern and central Gaza, where a residential building was reduced to rubble. The IDF says the strike targeted a Hamas commander who took part in the October 7th attack. Israel's top court has dealt a political blow to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, striking down a key component of his contentious judicial overhaul. CTV's Garrett Berry has been following today's developments. Garrett?
Heather, political divisions in Israel have basically been suppressed since the war started in October. So the big question now is whether this decision will reignite tensions in the country. That's because the core of this court case is an issue that provoked big protests in Israel last year. When the Netanyahu government announced an overhaul of the country's justice system, thousands took to the streets. First against the changes, but then others encounter protests for the changes. Today, the court voted to overturn the law that prevents judges from reversing government decisions they deem unreasonable. It's another chapter in a debate over who has final say. Now, political watchers are wondering what comes next and what it will mean for Israel.
The country is wounded because it is no longer perceived to be invulnerable by its enemies. That was the major takeaway from the attack by Hamas and Iran behind them. Now we have the reigniting internally of divisions that could further emphasize the point.
We have heard from the Israeli justice minister. He said his government would not be discouraged, but gave no indication about what exactly might come next, saying that considering the current climate, he and his government must act with restraint. Heather?
All right, Garrett, thanks. Canadians will experience a range of new measures in 2024, from tax hikes to business requirements. Some changes could have a significant impact on household incomes. CTV's Allison Bamford explains.
Between new Canada pension plan rules and EI tax rate increases, Canadians will be paying more of their wages to taxes this year than they did in 2023.
If you're making about $73,200 or more this year, you can expect to pay about $5,100 in payroll taxes. That's a $347 increase.
On April 1st, carbon pricing will increase to $80 a ton. Most Canadians will feel it at the pumps and on the price of goods. Others will see it on their natural gas bills. But not in Saskatchewan, where the province stopped collecting the carbon levy on home heating, a direct response to the federal exemption on heating oil that mainly benefits Atlantic Canada.
We asked them to do the right thing and treat all Canadian families equally. Thus far, they've chosen not to do that, not to treat all Canadian families equally.
The new year comes with a number of new regulations as well. Ottawa is introducing business requirements around accessibility, pay equity, and child labor prevention.
Anytime you add regulatory burden, you make running a business more expensive. You benefit the larger businesses at the expense of the smaller businesses.
Experts say the increase in regulations and taxes will slow economic growth.
Tax increases slow down the economy because they take money out of the economy, leaving less purchasing power in the hands of the pockets of people.
Even with the upcoming rollout of the federal dental care plan and a boost to the carbon price rural rebate, some experts say it's not enough to offset the hike taxpayers will face this year. Heather?
Allison, thank you. And many Canadians are worried they can't keep up.
My mortgage payment went up $1,600 over the course of a year.
After the break, how 2023 cost families dearly as they prepare for the pinch ahead. The high cost of living made 2023 a very challenging year for Canadians. Difficult to find housing or put food on the table, forcing many to make tough choices. That's why affordability is #1 in our top 10 stories of the year. Here's CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief, Geneviève Bushman.
A fruitless search for cheap eats through grocery store aisles kicked off 2023. Remember this price tag posted online in January? Over $37 for 5 chicken breasts at a Loblaws meat counter in Toronto. So this is where we're at, wrote one consumer needing to buy chicken on layaway. Loblaws said it was a premium quality product. Still, to Canadians, it was a sign of the times, along with food banks struggling to meet record demand.
It's shocking. It's kind of a little bit scary about where things are going and how people's budgets manage.
Canada's annual inflation rate was 5.9% then. It's now at 3.1%. But consumers were also pointing to grocers' profits and executive bonuses for the sticker shock.
I know food prices are top of mind these days.
Loblaw President Galen Weston had become a lightning rod. In April, he announced he would step back from day-to-day operations in early 2024. In the fall, grocery chain heads were summoned to Ottawa, told to produce plans to stabilize costs for consumers or face new taxes.
We know that our efforts today are helping to slow food inflation, and we expect this trend to continue.
They say they'll have more details in January. Here's a grocery list of where we're at now. Ground beef cost $10.64 per kilogram in January, $11.82 in October. Butter was $5.87, $6.12 almost a year later. The price of broccoli was $3.28 to $3.33 in October. The slowdown in price hikes is in part linked to overall inflation that the Bank of Canada has struggled to tame with interest rates. January began with a hike of overnight lending rates to 4.5%. Now interest rates are at 5%.
Unless we were to see some really surprising inflation news, for instance, in December or in January, I think we're probably at the peak. The question is, how quickly do rates go down in 2024?
The higher rates haven't quite driven down inflation to where the head of the Bank of Canada predicted last spring.
We're expecting it to be about 3% this summer.
It actually went up to 3.8% in September.
2.5% by the end of the year.
It's at 3.1%, still off from the bank's target of 2%. But the interest rate hikes have pushed some mortgage payments through the roof.
My mortgage payment went up $1,600 over a course of a year. And yeah, things have been really tough.
This in the middle of a housing crunch, where rents too are shooting up and not enough new homes are being built. Montreal, for instance, faced a crisis on July 1st, Quebec's traditional moving day. Dozens of families could not find a new address. There's nothing I can afford, said this mother of two. I'm desperate.
Okay, let's take a look at one of the beautiful micro units.
The government promised $6.2 billion for housing in its latest fiscal update, but restoring affordability is a tall order. This as evictions and rising housing prices are leaving more and more Canadians with no place to call home. And economists say Canadians are likely to continue to struggle in 2024 with high costs and high household debt a reality. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Coming up, she shoots, she scores.
And she's pretty much all alone. She gets it marked down.
Skating into a league of their own. Another chapter in hockey history was written today at the former Maple Leaf Gardens. That's where the puck dropped for the inaugural game of the new Professional Women's Hockey League.
Shelton with her stick on that, and she gets it! Ella Shelton scores! History is hers!
Ontario's Ella Shelton scored the first goal in PWHL history en route to a 4-0 victory for New York over Toronto. CTV's Janice Golding on the excitement of a game-changing new league.
Tickets for today's historic game sold out within minutes.
We got season tickets right off the bat, and we're here to cheer on the women.
And the excitement was palpable outside the Mattamy Centre this morning. The lineup to see the first game of the Professional Women's Hockey League, or PWHL, extending for blocks.
This is amazing. This is a long time coming, and I'm just so excited.
For the first game, faced off against New York. The puck drop featuring none other than tennis legend and celebrated advocate for women in sports, Billie Jean King, along with 5-time Olympic medalist Jana Heffert, who reflected today on the other women's hockey leagues that did not stand the test of time over the last quarter century.
Been ups and there's been downs, and there's been a number of different versions of leagues, and I played in 3 of them myself. And, I don't think we look at any of them as failures. We look at them as part of the journey to get here, and they're all important.
The PWHL features 6 teams: Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Boston, New York, and Minnesota, and says it is the first women's hockey league to boast the best players in the world under one umbrella.
The way the crowd reacted when we came on the ice was really cool. I think just to have that atmosphere coming out into the home opener was something that you're just proud to play for Toronto.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, I hope that young girls look up and go, I'm going to do that one day and be just like her and play in this league as well.
A new league that's creating new hope for the future.
Really exciting. Oh, it's just so cool to see people like me playing.
My daughters have an opportunity I never had when I was their age.
And you wanted to play hockey?
Absolutely. But hockey was for boys, so not anymore.
And win or lose, Toronto fans say the creation of this league is a big victory for both women in sport and our city. Unfortunately, Toronto lost today's game 4-0, but the players will have a chance to redeem themselves given all 12 of Toronto's home games sold out before the team ever hit the ice. Janice Golding, CTV News, Toronto.
After the break, a seasonal shout out. Shining a spotlight on unsung heroes, a salute to our colleagues of CTV News. That's our show for this New Year's Day. I'm Heather Butts. Morella Fernandez is here tomorrow. We're celebrating the new year by acknowledging our colleagues who work hard to bring you the shows you know and trust. Some names are familiar. Most work behind the scenes. So as we say goodnight and thank you for watching, this is our CTV News team.
This has made you a target.
5 crucial questions to expose the truth.
He made a mistake. That's stunning.
One team uncovers the stories that need to be told. Watch W5, Fridays at 10 on CTV.